How does leverage play a role in the forehand, and how does it apply in your own game? Well, let's take a look at what leverage is. What we are referring to is the orientation of the racket, the handle, the hand and wrist at contact point and throughout the contact zone. As you can see, I've got an angle here which starts from the initiation of the forward swing, where we get the lag and flip, which is a topic for another video. But the reason that a lot of players struggle with this concept is because there's a huge belief that we need to snap the wrist on the forehand. Now, the problem with snapping your wrist through the contact zone is that you won't have leverage, and the little power that you may think you are getting comes with the cost of not having anywhere as near as much accuracy, and not to mention a technique that will eventually lead to injury down the road. So we will see players who have more of a Western grip with the hand not appearing to be as cocked back, and this is basically the exception to this rule, where there's going to be a fixed wrist position throughout contact point, because players with more extreme grips, myself included, when your hand goes further below the handle, it is getting supported not so much by your wrist, but actually the base of your palm, where your thumb is, where this big fat chunk is here. So players with more extreme grips will appear not to have leverage, and it will look like they're snapping their wrist, but in fact the curl is still there. It's just much less pronounced because of the position of the hand on the handle. But players with more of an Eastern grip, you will see this angle much more pronounced. Now, how does leverage on your forehand provide you with a better shot, a more powerful stroke? Well, as you can see here, when we get rid of this movement throughout the contact point, we can have a more sturdy and clean connection and a longer hitting zone. All right? We want the follow through to come through and across our body. Okay, we have the wiper finish, where we could say we're turning a doorknob at the end, and a lot of players that don't have leverage, they won't go through the target line of the ball, right? At the beginning of the stroke, we want to feel like we're setting the hand in line with the incoming ball, okay? So we want to feel like we then drive through that same shot line, and the butt cap will basically be leading towards the ball. But that's going to be a byproduct of throwing the body first and really letting the muscles that are bigger run the show. In the setup, we want the racket to be on the outside of our body, and when we pull to initiate the forward swing, we should feel like this hand is directly in line with the incoming ball, and then from here it's just boom, we pull forward. And this is where we're going to get this leverage, and our wrist is going to fall back into what is known as the slot. And then the rest of the swing, we need to maintain leverage before, during, and all the way through. And then not until the ball has left our strings do we want to relax that angle. But a lot of players, they do this relaxation way too early, and it really throws off the entire mechanics of the swing. Now, the reason a lot of players won't get leverage is because from here, they'll usually tuck in the elbow and then take the racket back. And then because they're so late, when they initiate the forward swing, the elbow stops here and the lower arm comes around. What we want to get into the habit of doing, and if you want to play tennis at higher than the intermediate level, you need to make sure that you're getting full arm extension through the contact zone. Now, this doesn't mean that the elbow can't have any bend. In fact, most pro forehands do have a little bit of bend at least, and some of them have a lot of bend, but we still have the bend here. This is the common thread, okay? Some straight arm, but there'll still be a bend here. But most players use what we call the double bend, okay? It's pretty hard to get the elbow completely straight, and for some people that's not comfortable either. So it's okay to have a bend throughout the contact zone, but you gotta make sure you go through and that wrist is lagging behind as dead weight. So you don't wanna feel like you're forcing it back, but I like to tell my players the wrist is along for the ride. So if you throw your body first and you just pull from your full turn, the racket is going to come along and fall back into this leverage position. And the only thing you really have to consciously do is not flick your wrist. So as long as the wrist is not actually active, then your leverage should happen automatically, as long as you don't flick it or roll the wrist before contact point. And that's really the key to forehand leverage and getting more what people call pop on your shots. Okay, this is the number one remedy for forehands that don't sound clean, balls that shank, spray, don't go where you want. If you want to hit your target, you want to hit it with power and a clean sound and clean strokes, you need leverage on your forehand. In any event, thanks for tuning in, and use what you've learned to modernize your game. If you like what you learned here, I recommend taking the next step and going into my online course, because it teaches you how to play with power and consistency and learn the modern game without wasting thousands of dollars. You can get it by clicking the link down below.